UFC 298 post-fight show here with Fight Bananas. I got the main man, Blake Schneiders. I'm Jonathan Ramlakan, aka Jonathan underscore MMA. We just saw one of the craziest knockouts in UFC championship history when Ilia Topuria just knocked out Alexander Volkanovski. We had a hell of a co-main event between Robert Whittaker and Paulo Costa. Garry fought. It wasn't the most exciting thing, but we saw that Merab took down Henry Cejudo, securing his number one contendership for the 135-pound division, and even Fluffy Hernandez getting things started here and opening the card with the beautiful rear naked choke to get things going. But we're going to kick it off right where we left it here at UFC 298. We left it off with Ilia Topuria knocking out Alexander Volkanovski. Blake, what's up, my man? How are you doing? What was your reaction to that knockout and overall just to the card to start off with?
I'm amazing, Jonathan. You're looking amazing as always. The card itself, great card tonight. Everything was awesome. I thought the energy was really high. The crowd was really into it. My reaction to that Ilia Topuria knockout was actually probably the same as yours. I was utterly silenced. I was just looking at the screen like, did I really just see that happen? I've never seen Volkanovski get done quite like that, and give it off to hats off to Ilia Topuria, because that overhand right in the squabble that they were into at that point was just fucking money, man. It was money. It was so clean. I've never seen Volk just slept. So, I mean, I was my hands were on my head, and because I now know what this means. I mean, Ilia Topuria is now the undisputed champion of the world, and I don't think anybody is quite surprised that he is the champ. I don't think anybody thought he wasn't going to get there eventually, but in the fashion in which he did it against the pound for pound, one of the greatest fighters to ever step into the octagon, wow. I mean, I'm flabbergasted. And apparently you are too. Leaving John
Yeah, I mean,
speechless.
the first round was pretty competitive. Yeah, I mean, the first round was very competitive. You saw Volkanovski with kicking at all three levels, inside, outside, low kicks, kicking to the body, throwing a couple head kicks in there. Ilia was finding his range in that first round. That's what it
Mhm.
seemed like was happening. He was missing, but he was getting closer and closer, right? He was starting to catch him at the end of his punches. In the second round, he started to seem to really get into that. And from that point, it was a body left hook and then the right hook that actually put Alexander Volkanovski down. And now it leaves the question, right? What's next for him, right? But from here, let's just talk about what it took for Ilia to get here, right? Because he was on a reign of absolute destruction, pretty much mauling everyone they threw at him, right? He took out when it was Josh Emmett, right? He absolutely destroyed Josh Emmett. He absolutely destroyed Ryan Hall as well, right? He took out, like you said, Jai Herbert at 155, even when he fought up a weight class too, right? So he's one of these guys that is still currently undefeated. Which, when you're undefeated and you're a champion, that makes it even more of a spectacle that you are, right? You have more because there's two things now to be broken, right? Because, of course, don't get me wrong, Volkanovski, he was undefeated at 145 in the UFC, but he had the loss on his record already, and then he had two losses to Makhachev, right? But now you have Ilia completely undefeated, and now he's the champion. The person that beats Ilia, that's going to be, insane to see in itself. But just starting this reign off on a crazy note, he's undefeated. He wore the belt before, which is superstitious to most people. He already had it in his bio going in to the thing as a champion. But, how far do you see Ilia taking this champion? Because he's a very well-rounded fighter. He has, obviously, like we saw, the power, but the grappling skills, very underrated as well. The wrestling, he's able to do pretty much all of it. We see throughout the tests that he had on the way to this championship win tonight, he's showcased a lot of his skills. So how far do you see him taking this championship reign?
Honestly, I'm looking at all of the guys in this featherweight division right now, and I do not see a contender outside of somebody like outside of a guy like Volkanovski. Maybe you get a Yair Rodriguez who sneaks up, but I just feel like Ilia Topuria is so cerebral in what he does. It's almost as if there's no flaws in his game. He's got, I mean, I think on the cast they said he's been doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu since he was 4. He was doing Greco-Roman since he was 6. He's one of the best boxers in that division, up there with Max Holloway. I mean, where's the chink in the armor? You know, where is that crack, and how can you get it? Because Volkanovski was the best guy to go up against him. He was the guy that I think was going to give him the toughest challenge. And it was a really good fight up until it was over. And it was over in the blink of an eye. So I'm looking at this division, and I'm not going to lie, outside of Volkanovski, Holloway's on the tail end of his career. He's obviously still a legend in the sport, still a great fighter. He's got the hands, but Ilia Topuria's got that power, man. He's scary. And I don't know if I see anybody currently in the top 10 that can get outside of Volkanovski, that can give him a run for his money. He's a scary, scary fighter. And like when you watch him, I think the fear that he brings into the arena with him exudes through the television set and hits me as a fan, as a fight watcher, as a fight analyst. Watching that, I'm scared because I was scared for Volkanovski. I had all the faith in him, but just what I saw and knowing how many different ways he can beat you, that the whole division is on notice right now, and I do not see a light at the end of the tunnel for a while.
Yeah, it's tough to see. I mean, you also have coming up the rankings right off of a win against Arnold Allen, Movsar Evloev at 18-0.
Yes.
You know, he's a guy that can potentially maybe is one win away against one of those guys in the top, right? You know, you beat a Max or, you beat a Yair or something like that, who's a little bit higher than you, someone's in that contention thing. That's also good. Sean Sterling mentioning, also Yair versus Ilia, the jiu-jitsu battles that could go on there. That would be a very fun fight too to see. If Ortega's the one that comes out of the fight against Yair, in the fight that they're going to be having next, he could potentially be a contender. And of course, like you said, Max Holloway always is in the conversation with that side of thing, even win or lose against Justin Gaethje, right? That fight's going to be at 155. Win or lose, I still think you maybe can throw Max in that conversation, if not to, if anything, make Ilia Topuria's name even that much brighter and shine his star a little bit more, right? Because, if you have a guy like Ilia Topuria, when Max Holloway was coming up, who did he beat? He beat one of the greatest of all times in Jose Aldo, right? Mm-hmm. And he also beat a lot of, guys that were, really legendary on the way there too, right? He beat a lot of different guys. He retired Korean Zombie, obviously, in a couple of fights ago too, right? So you have, you have those guys that when they're coming up, you want them to beat some of those guys that already have the shine to kind of, in the pro wrestling term, get the rub. Right, you want to get the rub from the stars. So I would love to see Ilia versus Max Holloway. The striking battles would be great, right? Max is one of those guys that's also really, really crisp with the boxing. So just of course, the power would be the great difference between that, because if he does land on Max, obviously the guy who hasn't really been dropped could change coming up against Justin Gaethje, right? But when you have a guy against Max and Ilia, that would be a really fun matchup to see. Of course, like I said, Movsar Evloev. Any closing thoughts on this fight, my man, before we get into the co-main event between Paulo Costa and Rob Whittaker? Because what a fight that was.
Yeah. I like, I know we've talked about, does the champ get an automatic repeat? Does it get to run it back? When you get planted like Volkanovski did, I can see an argument maybe for the other side, but I would like to see this fight again because of the way he got knocked out. It was in a phone booth. They were squabbling in the corner, and he just got the perfect right hand on him. I think Volkanovski, I don't know if he would change his approach much, maybe just a little bit more on the pressure side or a little bit more on the kind of the gauging for that first and second round. So I would like to see this run back. I think Volk has the ability to beat him because Volk is no slouch. I mean, obviously the dude is a two-time champ. Obviously reigning champ in this division. I would like to see it run back. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I can totally hear the argument for why somebody else might get the shot before him.
Absolutely. I definitely see, both arguments, right? When you have such a, Yeah, and Sean, if you because it seems like you're on top of everything, my man, I appreciate you, being active with us. If you see the tweet come out, or if you see when it gets announced, because I know Dana is also talking about potentially he was going to talk about announcing the UFC 300 main event.
Yeah.
So we will give that, a little bit of talking time too once we get that announced, or if that comes out while we're here live, right? So definitely will stick with us to see when that UFC, if Dana stays true to his word and announces that main event like he says he was going to. We'll keep it right here. Jamal versus Pereira, is that maybe the main event? I'm not sure if that's confirmed or
That's
not.
what per Dave Van Auken. That's what we're hearing.
Okay, Jamal Hill versus Alex Pereira, and I think that's a great
I love
segue. I
it.
mean, we can segue into that fight real quick right before we get into the rest of this card, just to give it a quick minute. Jamal Hill versus Alex Pereira, right? Obviously, Jamal coming off the injury. You had to throw a title fight on that card. Obviously, Max versus Justin Gaethje right there was for the BMF, and then you had a couple other one right too, but you had to throw really a big name on top of that. I think Alex Pereira is that big name you want to put there. Do you think Jamal has a chance, or how do you think that fight goes? Give me a quick little breakdown of that for me.
I do think Jamal has a chance. I think Jamal is one of those guys that probably doesn't get as many flowers as he probably should. I think his ability, especially with how much power he has in his hands, and his skill set is a lot better than him just being some big lumbering guy who can knock people out. He knows how to fight. He knows how to box. He is very crisp at all of it. I think what he would have to do in this fight is really manage his distance and just be super cerebral about how he's getting in that range of Pereira. But once he's able to sneak in, I think he's got all the power in the world to put Pereira down. We've seen him be able to be knocked out before. So I definitely think Jamal Hill has a chance. I think it's a great fight. I don't think it's necessarily the fight everybody was kind of crossing their fingers hoping for, but this is definitely one that's not going to disappoint. I mean, UFC 300 is going to be legendary.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we'll break that fight down a little bit more. Let's get into this co-main event, Robert Whittaker versus Paulo Costa, because, wow, this was one of the greatest co-main events I've seen in a long time, right? You had Paulo Costa, who was eating leg kicks. He was eating jabs, eating right hands and left hooks, right? He was literally eating everything that Robert Whittaker had to throw. And, Paulo Costa, on the other hand, was able to hit Robert with a beautiful spinning wheel kick at the end of round one, wobbled him. If there was more time in that round, would have been a finish, man. But, throughout the fight, even after that, damaging moment from in the first round by Paulo Costa, Robert Whittaker was able to maintain the footwork. Sean Sterling mentioning 30-27 by one judge is ridiculous. But, I agree with that. But like I said, Rob, throughout the second and third round, was able to maintain the footwork. Don't get me wrong. Paulo was landing some punches throughout the fight. That kick with his front leg throwing up to the head is just so quick. It's really has no telegraph too. Rob really good defensively, moving around, able to chop at the leg of Paulo Costa throughout most of the fight and able to get the win. I thought it was very impressive. I think it was really good to see Robert Whittaker in this form again, obviously coming off a tough loss against DDP, current champion. But I think Robert Whittaker throws his name right back in that hat for contention after a win like this. Obviously, there's a couple names right there. You have him, Israel Adesanya, right? Sean, Sean is still there as well, right? So Sean Strickland is still there, coming off the loss. Obviously, he's not going to get an immediate rematch just because he didn't have a lengthy reign, but he's still up in that light as well. But what were your thoughts on on Robert Whittaker's win over Paulo Costa and maybe kind of the resurgence in a still young Robert Whittaker?
Yeah, that's what was so funny. I believe it was Rogan who mentioned it on the cast tonight that Robert Whittaker has been in the game for so long. We feel like he's this ancient kind of mystic being within the MMA world. Yet he's only 32. He's actually the same exact age as Paulo Costa, and yet we consider Paulo Costa not quite as old as Robert Whittaker. It's because we've had a long and a storied tradition and history of watching Robert Whittaker, and we've seen Robert Whittaker at his absolute best, earning the nickname the Reaper for certain reasons. We've also seen him get beat up a few times where it wasn't sad like watching Tony Ferguson, but it was sad from a fan's perspective because you want to see him win. You know what I mean? So he even said he'd lost a little bit of the he kind of lost his way. He forgot what they were actually doing. And these are his words. I'm not crediting him, crediting this on his behalf. This is actually his words. he said, I kind of forgot that this is the fight game. We're in there to punch people in the face. And, you know, and I think we really saw him get back to this. And not only did we see him get back to true fighting form, we also saw him get dragged into deep waters in the very first round with that beautiful Paulo Costa spinning head kick, which came out of nowhere. Like you said, Paulo Costa I think he is so sneaky good, like you said, at not telegraphing his kicks, but then throwing them out of nowhere. And they come with such power and precision. They're fucking nasty. And the way he was able to take that on the chin, clearly got wobbled, was able to withstand a barrage of punches before the end of round one, and then come back. I mean, he was getting beat up with that jab. I mean, if you're looking up just damage-wise after this fight, you would think Paulo Costa won. But the way Robert Whittaker was able to fight back, basically shuck off any damage and say, listen, come here, motherfucker. I'm here to fight you, and I'm here to take this all 3 rounds. I thought it was amazing. I actually thought Paulo Costa did really good. There's 2 stories with Paulo Costa. You either love him or you hate him. I think there's probably more people that hate him. I will tell you, I have been in both camps in my career. I used to love him, then I hated him, and now over the last probably 8 months, I kind of love him again because I feel like he is regrouped and reorganized and stopped talking as much and got back to his dedication for fighting. I mean, the dude is an absolute animal. It looks like he's chiseled out of granite, for God's sake. So the fact that he can put the body together, put the attitude down, and get back in the ring and actually bump his skill set up, I thought he looked extremely crisp today. The guy acts like damage does not matter to him. His shin was about as big as a beach ball after all those leg kicks from Robert Whittaker. He can withstand any punches. I mean, we saw that war he went to with Yoel Romero where those guys' heads should no longer be on their bodies, okay? So I loved this fight, and I was actually extremely excited for it. I think like Sean said, 30-27 for one judge. Get that guy the fuck out of there. I don't know what that guy's doing. I don't know what fight he's watching. I thought this was extremely close. Definitely not mad at all that Whittaker won. I believe he did win. But I thought Paulo Costa came out and put on a good showing for kind of a rebranding of what Paulo Costa can be after that 18-month layoff.
Absolutely. You know what I mean? And you have to still think that these two guys that are still relatively close to the top of the 185-pound division, right? You know, I think we could be lining up to see, you know, since obviously Jamal Hill versus Alex Pereira is going to be the main event for UFC 300, I think that we could probably see DDP versus Israel Adesanya. Yeah, it's probably, I saw with that. Could be the next fight with that side of things, right? You know what I mean? That could probably be the next matchup for Izzy versus DDP. So I think this leaves Robert Whittaker versus Sean Strickland, right? Because that leaves both those guys competing for a number one contendership fight, right? You also can set up Khamzat Chimaev coming back to 185. You can throw Khamzat versus Paulo Costa. Those guys have been going back and forth with one another. I think that would be a really fun fight. Obviously, you know that Paulo Costa is an underrated grappler as well, right? He's one of those guys that has skills, right? So I think the next fight for both these guys, I think it's going to be Robert Whittaker versus Sean Strickland. I think I can see that matchup happening. And then I can also see Paulo Costa versus somebody like Khamzat Chimaev. Obviously, he's a very much so a wild card in this division, but I would love to see, a guy like that matched up versus the power of Paulo Costa, right? That would be really fun to see, especially, you see somebody like Gilbert Burns give Khamzat a little bit of trouble. How about a guy like Paulo Costa at 185, right? That's going to be a fun one. Randy Aragutak saying Khamzat title shot up next. I'm not sure if he's earned a title shot at 185 just yet. You know what I mean? Just to be honest, I think, obviously he's a very dominant fighter, but I'm not sure if we've seen that just yet. That fight against Usman, he was starting to look a little bit little weathered towards the end there. I think that was a 5-round fight. You could have seen Usman take that one, right? But Khamzat Chimaev, I think that will be a very interesting matchup, regardless of who he gets next, if it's Paulo Costa. But I think Robert Whittaker versus Sean Strickland. Do you think that's the path they go next? Or do you think that's a pretty likely matchup for those guys moving down the line?
I think Strickland versus Whittaker would be great. It depends on how he wants. It depends on how Dana wants to treat Whittaker. I mean, this is a big win for Whittaker. Do you want to throw him right into Sean Strickland and say, hey, listen, I don't think that this is a kind of an easing you back in. I think this is you still got a title shot. Go ahead and fight for it. I think the fight itself would be awesome. I mean, talk about those two guys getting together. I also love the Khamzat Chimaev versus Paulo Costa, because if he chops down Paulo Costa, there's a real talk of bumping him up. Now, where does Marvin Vettori sit in all of this? Because I think Vettori versus Chimaev would also be awesome to watch. So I think it's too early to bump him up in the 185 division for a title shot, because there's so many guys there that still can basically challenge for that title position.
Yeah, 185 is very wide open. I think, like I said, I think the most likely next matchup is going to be Izzy versus DDP, just because of the past history they have there. But 185 after that matchup is very much so wide open to 3 or 4 guys right now that can string together 2 wins. I think the next person that strings together 2 wins at the top of 185 really could set themselves up for a matchup there, right? Lock themselves up there. But the next fight I want to get to is another fight that had heavy title implications. Merab Dvalishvili versus Henry Cejudo, right? And that was an insane fight, right? There was 2 ways that fight was going to go, and it ended up going kind of a mix of both, right? And it really, because there was a point where when 2 wrestlers, great wrestlers, they get together, it neutralizes. And you see a little bit of stand up, and you saw a little bit of that, right? You saw these guys neutralize each other at a little bit point, but you also saw both of them taking each other down, right? First, it was Henry Cejudo finishing the round of end of round 1 on top for the most part, but then it was round 2 and 3 where you saw, and the patented pressure of Merab just get to Henry Cejudo, right? This is an Olympic gold medalist that Merab was able to, in the 3rd round, pick him up, walk him to Mark Zuckerberg, slam him on the floor. Merab, I think, has been insanely great at just the star power that he's been growing, right? Online, the social media, what he's been doing has been wonderful. And then tonight, I think, just grew his stardom even more. You heard the reaction when he walked out there. I think he's undeniably the next contender for the championship after Cheeto versus Sean O'Malley. Could obviously Sean saying in the comments that Cejudo injured after the first week, potentially that too, but that's the fight game, right? When you get hit like that, something's bound to break at some point. It always happens, whether it's the arm, whether it's the shin. If you're throwing a leg kick, sometimes that happens there too, right? But Merab Dvalishvili absolutely ragdolling Henry Cejudo in the 3rd round. I think he's gonna, like we talked about, give him that rub, right? You just beat another former champion as well. This is a guy you beat Jose Aldo, you beat now Henry Cejudo. You're just putting more notches on your resume even before getting to the championship. And this is a guy that's pressure is going to be insane. If he faces Sean O'Malley or if he chases Cheeto Vera, I think regardless, he gets the job done there. I see him as the next 135-pound division champion.
100%. I think it's scary because as much as you hate Henry Cejudo because of how cringe he is, but the motherfucker is just shut up sometimes, man. Like I don't want you on the mic. I love how you fight. I don't want you talking because I think it's just annoying. And I think it's fake. But he's a great fighter, and you can't deny Triple C. I mean, the dude, like you said, gold medalist in the Olympics, 2-division champ. The guy had a storied career, retired, came back because he thought he had a real shot. He was talking a lot of trash on the internet. Talking a lot of trash in the embeddeds, saying if he can't beat Merab, then, he probably should retire. I think that was very lightly spoken on your part, Cejudo, because you did not respect the opponent that Merab was, and that man is an absolute force of nature. The Georgian tornado, essentially, is what he should be called, because goddamn, his stamina is through the roof. I mean, I don't even know if there's a person that has that kind of stamina that you could compare him to at this point. Okay. His power is great. His movement is great. I thought Cejudo looked good in that 1st round. I thought he came out strong. He had a great game plan, ended up on top. Okay. Boom. 1-0 Cejudo. Then it looked like, I don't know if it was middle of the 2nd round. He blocked a kick from Dvalishvili, and I don't know how that worked, but it hit him kind of at the tip of the elbow, but I believe it broke his forearm. I'm not sure, but that thing swelled up really quick, and that's not the point where it got hit, so I think it did end up breaking. We'll have to see what he says in the post-fight press conferences, but Merab was disgusting. I mean, he just turned on the gas smelled blood in the water, and did not let up for the next 2 rounds. And honestly, just like we said with Volk, I've never seen somebody treat Cejudo like that and make him look like a kid who really honestly could have crawled out of that ring after that, because he looked like at the end like he was devastated at the fact that he was still getting ragdolled. And when you pick a man up and carry him like a gladiator and parade him in front of the entire crowd and then fucking try to slam him down, and there was nothing he could do about it, that's got to be so, like, that's just cutting your nuts off, man. And to do it in the 3rd round as well, I mean, that was nasty. Now the question for you, John, is, after you just saw what Merab did to Cejudo, if he gets a chance against Sugar Sean, what does that fight look like in your eyes?
See, it's just going to be, how long does it take for Merab? Because Sean O'Malley has really good lateral movement.
Yes.
Right. He's one of those guys that, he's moving. He moves really, really well. Side to side. He does good with the misdirection, where he pretends like he's going left and then boom, he's cutting right. And I think he's going to have a little bit of a height advantage on Merab as well. So it's going to be, how long is it going to take for Merab to get up the middle and kind of get into a leg with there, right? Because if Sean can use the jab and keep him at the end and maybe keep that like that uppercut as kind of like a defense mechanism, and use that knee as like a little bit of a guard. He's a really rangy guy, right? So there's a lot of weapons that Sean has there that Merab has to get past initially. But if Merab gets past those weapons and he gets a hold of Sean O'Malley, I think it's close to over, right? I think at that point, if there's a lot of time on the round, this is a point where, even if he doesn't get the finish, he is going to beat Sean O'Malley up. You saw tonight, even when he didn't get the takedown on Henry Cejudo, he was kneeing him over and over and over again. And it's just one of those things, is like, you would only see that somebody spam knees like that in like UFC, right? You don't see that normally, right? You usually see guys just like wait, try to make their position, but Merab is just always doing something. You saw when he was on the ground and he was like a 50-50 position, throwing punches to the body as well. He's always doing something. And that's the hard part about Merab, right? Is because with him, he's just always active. He's always, making you think. He's always making you work. And, when you're always having to think about something, you're bound to make a mistake at that point, right? And that's what Merab is really good at capitalizing on. So I think, O'Malley, even if he has good jiu-jitsu, right, that's only going to be for defense. He's not going to get a triangle off Merab. He's not going to get an armbar off Merab. I think Merab is too sound when it comes to the grappling side of things. But like I said, Sean has a couple weapons that he has to get past first before, getting to the takedown. But, if Merab can do what he's been doing to everyone else, I absolutely think that, he could, I very highly think that he is the next champion of the 135-pound division.
Yeah. I think what, and it would be a totally different scenario, and it would look very differently against Sean O'Malley because of how tall he is and how lengthy he is. But what I was very impressed with today was the fact that the way Merab was able to constantly, every time he was tied up with Cejudo, he found a way to pick the ankle. He found a way to trip. He found a way to get leverage and get positioning and angling. That against an Olympic wrestler, against a guy who literally won the gold medal for being the best in the world at the highest level, looked like he was annoyed. I mean, I was getting annoyed for Cejudo because I was like, dude, this guy is just he's pestering the shit out of you with all these trips, the way he positions his foot behind the ankle, the way he's able to keep his legs out and keep or be able to get Cejudo's legs out from underneath the middle crotch. So that I thought was a very it wasn't, I think Rogan maybe talked about it, or maybe it was Bisman who talked about it, but that art of being able to maneuver and trip, maneuver and fall, like kind of that judo style, not the throws as much, but just being able to position your body to get somebody off balance. I was extremely impressed with that. And I think Cejudo was very, very annoyed.
Yeah, I mean, he did an amazing job just being able to, do it all essentially. You know what I mean? He was, able to withstand the stand-up at some point. He was able to, just do everything tonight. And he's just showing fight after fight, he was able to do that. You know what I mean? But, outside of that, man, even the rest of this card tonight was amazing, right? You saw in the first fight, Anthony Fluffy Hernandez getting Roman Kapilov down, which has been a hard thing. He successfully defended 20 takedowns in a row. And then after he actually, before saying that, I am very happy for Merab, after, because he didn't want to fight for Aljo for so long, and for him to still get this title shot. And, even though he's probably could have stayed and just stayed inactive and waited for the title shot, he was active and he's been running over everyone. And because of that, he's a bigger star now than he would have ever been if he would have just waited and sat out. Right. But yeah, just great win by Merab, man. I'm excited to see what he does next. When that fight's going to happen, maybe in the summer, we'll see Merab with the belt around his waist, and Ray Longo in that camp will have another champion in their corner once again. But the rest of the card was good. Like I said, Anthony Hernandez was able to actually take down Roman Kapilov, who I think successfully had previously and during this fight defended like 20 takedowns in a row or something crazy like that. So able to take him down, able to get the back and get the rear naked choke. That was absolutely beautiful. I think that was a great way to kick off the card, because tonight's card was absolutely amazing. We'll talk about Ian Garry in a second here, because because that was very that was terrible.
Say it. Yeah, thank you.
Awful. Ian Garry was running the entire fight. Don't get me wrong, he has skills, right? But he wasn't willing to engage tonight at all.
No.
Right. So any thoughts on the Anthony Hernandez fight before we break down Ian Garry and kind of what happened in his fight?
I was more impressed with Hernandez, because I like Kapilov quite a bit, and I think he's got a lot of raw talent. Sometimes he's a little quite sloppy sometimes with his technique, but he's a dog out there, man. But I thought Hernandez did a great job of getting himself in position and being able to get the neck of Kapilov after obviously getting him down, which apparently is extremely hard. But after he was able to get him down, he was constant. He was pressuring on that neck. He was fighting. Even when Kapilov, we thought he was going to go out the first time he got that guillotine, that rear naked choke in, Kapilov did a tremendous job of somehow getting out of that. I don't know how he got out of that. And usually that's when everybody, usually the fighter who gets out of it gives the crowd kind of a jeer. They're like, oh my gosh, okay, he got out of it. Then the guy who's doing the submission is kind of worn out. Nah, Hernandez went right back to it. He said, okay, turn over. I'll get you again. I'll get you again. I'll get you again. And he finally sunk it in, was able to get Kapilov the tap. He did not want to give up on that. And I thought it was great persistence on Hernandez's part.
Absolutely, man. It was just a very fun fight overall. I think that was good back and forth. There was points where Kapilov was showing good fight, but get it from there. But let's get into Ian Garry versus Jeff Neal, because I think coming into this fight, we all thought this was going to be a lot more heat to it, right? Obviously, everybody's been talking shit about Ian Garry, right? And Ian Garry wore the shirt of Jeff Neal and his mugshot, and then they go out to this fight and they're dapping up during the fight, high-fiving each other. That? And it's not just one time. It was like 3 or 4 times. Like, I don't want to see that shit. Don't get me wrong. I love when fighters are respectful to each other, right? But I don't want to see that during a fight at the end of the day, right? And Ian Garry was backing up and just moving essentially laterally the entire fight. And Jeff Neal, to his point, he wasn't even cutting the cage off. It seemed like he was walking in the wrong direction half the time and just being lazy with the entire fight, right? I'm not sure what happened to Jeff Neal, because when he beat up Vicente Luque and he, knocked out a bunch of these guys before, he was showing insane power and great movement. Tonight, we didn't see that from Jeff Neal. And with Ian Garry, you want to be the next big thing. You can't go out and show a performance like this. This isn't going to win you any fans. People aren't hating you just because you're a cuck, right? People are hating you because, you're going out there and performing like this. Like, yeah, you're undefeated, but at the end of the day, when you face a guy that can actually close that distance and get to you, it's not going to be the easiest thing in the world. Right now, I don't think he's had even that much competition. Jeff Neal has been the hardest, toughest test so far as name, but I don't even think that tonight Jeff Neal was the Jeff Neal that we know and see previously. But what were your thoughts on this fight? Because I think this was really probably the only boring fight on this card, maybe outside 1 or 2 prelims.
Yeah, no, this was dog shit. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I was extremely excited for this fight, and I about threw my computer through the fucking wall, because I just had to watch 2 guys who were just waiting the entire time for the other person to do something It was like two cats that were like just trying to get to know each other, but didn't really like each other, but weren't really sure. And they were just kind of like circling around the entire. I hated it. I hated watching every minute of that fight. I was waiting for Jeff Neal to throw a head kick, to land a big overhand bomb. Nothing happened. Ian Garry, to Sean's point in the comments, he was just point fighting out there. He was just like, all right, gotcha. Ooh, gotcha. Like he had some good kicks up the middle to create distance, but then he didn't do anything with it after he made he made his presence felt up the middle. He then didn't do anything with it. And it was just annoying. And with all of his shit in the media lately, like you said, him being essentially a cuck, at least that's what they say on the internet. I was expecting him to come out and like put on a fucking performance, man. Like go out there and actually show people, take all that rage, take all that talking and put it into the octagon. Instead, you two are talking like you're friends in the middle of the fight. You're dapping each other up multiple times. Your corner's now yelling at you. Stop fucking doing that. That's a quote from his corner. Stop dapping him up. Like, it was such a letdown. And like, I think the fans at one point even started booing because it was dog water.
Yeah, it was absolute dog water. I mean, at that point, it was a pretty close fight. You know what I mean?
I thought it was close.
Really close. But
I thought it was close because it was boring.
Yeah, close but very boring. At the end of the day, both guys really didn't show up the way we thought they would. But let's get to one of our favorite games, right? Because I think we'll get to break down some of the prelims through this game. Let's play Guess the Bonus, right? Tonight, there was one fight of the night and then 3 performance bonus awards. And they were both on prelims and main card. Give me your guesses.
Okay, so for performance bonuses, I'm going to give one to my man, Ming Yang Zhang. Did he get one?
Oh, you got to give me all of them first.
Oh, okay. Sorry. All right. So for performance bonus, my bad. Performance bonus, I'm going to go Ming Yang Zhang making his debut. Chinese fighter, came out, got the first round knockout against Brinson Ribeiro. He has the power, and the dude is, you don't usually see Chinese fighters in the light heavyweight division. I think he's going to be awesome. He's still, kind of a young prospect, but he's 17-6. I think he's going to be awesome. Ming Yang Zhang, I think, got one of them. Let's see.
Look, you got one of those right. So I'll just say you did get that right. You know what I mean? And just to kind of add off that point, he was kind of getting the flurry thrown at him when he got the knockout, which was a pretty cool to see. His opponent was a guy who also had knockout power. But like you said, making an insane debut, putting his opponent absolutely out. That was one of the better knockouts when it comes to the prelims this tonight. But yeah, that's correct. That's one of them. Got 2 more performance bonus awards and then 1 more fight of the night.
Okay. Performance bonuses. I think you'd have to give a performance bonus to Merab because he put on an absolute show. But I don't know if that would have been considered fight of the night because I think the fight dwindled in the second and third round. Another performance bonus, I would say it could go to Hernandez, maybe, or I don't know how far back on the prelims they wanted to give something. And then I think fight of the night was Volkanovski versus Topuria. Am I missing one? And Johnny froze on me. Oh, no. We might have lost John. That's okay, but I don't have the answers in front of me. I could definitely see Hernandez getting a performance bonus on this one, guys. I just thought it was good, especially I think Kapilov was a replacement, so it was last minute, and he still came in, and the guy had a tremendous kind of prospect behind him. So that's probably what I'm going with. I also thought for guys who didn't get to watch the prelims, one of the reasons we always preach watch the prelims is because there's so many good up-and-coming fighters on it. One of the guys that I really enjoyed watching today was Danny Barlow. Danny Barlow made his first UFC debut versus Josh Quinlan today, and he put on a spectacle, got the third-round knockout against him, but he just looked really good the whole time. We got John back yet? Where's this man at? He died on me? Looks like he fell off, guys. I don't have the answers in front of me. Oh, he's hopping back on. That's okay. So yeah, since we're waiting on waiting on John. I called him Josh a second ago, didn't I? Waiting on John here. We'll go over some of these other fights that I actually really liked. If you guys have not been watching Rinya Nakamura, bantamweight fighter, he's somebody who's come up and coming, and I'm telling you, he's going to be good. He's undefeated right now. He's 9-0. Fought Carlos Vera today, who trains under Ryan Hall. Carlos Vera has been in the game for a while, but Rinya Nakamura, man, he looks like he is going to be one of the next big things in that bantamweight division. Still a little raw, but he's got a ton of just well-rounded training. He can wrestle, he can strike, he's extremely fast, he can transition very well on the ground game. So I'm excited to see what that guy does coming up. Let's see. Barlow looked very solid. Yes, he did, Sean. Woodbury. Let's see. What was I? Woodbury fight. The Woodburn. Val Woodburn.
And we are back.
Oh, John's back. It's okay. I was just going down pretty much. I gave my picks. I don't know if I dropped out on you or if you dropped out on me or not, but kind of went over some of the fighters that I'm really looking forward to on the prelims of watching them, their up and coming futures. And one of them was Rinya Nakamura. I don't know if you got to see that fight at all, but dude's going to be a stud, I think. 9-0, still undefeated.
Yeah, I still think he's going to be good. My computer is lagging a little bit, but other bonuses, just kind of give those all. Anthony Fluffy Hernandez.
Boom.
Was one of them.
Yep.
So he was one of them. And then also, obviously, Ilia Topuria. Come on. Had to be one of them. And then fight of the night, Mackenzie Dern versus Amando Lemos. That was a really good fight, too.
Fight of the night?
Amando Lemos.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You know,
so I
think it had gone to Rob. I think Rob versus Costa was my pick, but
I said Volk versus Topuria for fight of the night. But I did not even say Mackenzie Dern. So I was 3 for 4. Slagging.
There you go.
Hard.
Not bad. Not bad. But I'm lagging, man. So, yeah, close me out, man. Close me out. It was a great freaking card. I'm sorry, guys, because my computer is sticking up a little bit. But close me out here, Blake.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, watching us. We know it's late, wherever you guys are watching from. That's awesome. That we appreciate everything. This was the breakdown for UFC 298. 2 fight bananas. Thank you guys so much for all you Fight Banana fans. If you don't watch the post-fight show, you better start. If you are watching, thank you so much for tuning in. Check out the Facebook page. The Facebook page is always popping. They're constantly posting. Check out the Instagram page. If you want to follow me or John, you guys can do that. I am at Wake and Blake. There you go. Wake and Blake 29, Jonathan MMA over on his side over there. Thank you to Dave Van Auken for everything, as always. And we will be excited to see you guys next week. Okay. And we are definitely going to be looking forward to UFC 299 and UFC 300. So for all the Fight Bananas fans, John, I'm going to give it to you the last word.
Let's go, man. Let's go. We'll always keep it right here. Make sure you guys like and follow for everything, like Blake said, but keep it right here. And we'll keep you right here after the next fight. We got next weekend a good fight coming up too. So we'll see you guys after next weekend. Have a good night, guys.